What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Movie Emporium's Top 10 Films and 10 Genres, where I take maybe 10 obscure films and put them in 10 different genres like romance, action, and so on and so forth. If you like what you see, of course, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome, hit that like button as well as commenting below any video that you watch, including this one. Okay, big shout out to Trivial Theater, who actually put me in the recommendations to do this list, as well as 10 other people. I don't necessarily have 10 other people I'll present it to, so I'll just throw it out to the ether. Whoever wants to do this, more than welcome to do it. But I wanted to do this because it gave me a chance to do 10 films that maybe people haven't seen before. I'm not going to do like my 10 favorite films of all time because it's 10 different genres, but I thought it'd be kind of cool, kind of fun to talk about these films and, you know, what they are. So, with that said, we'll go ahead, not in any specific order, not in any specific genre, you know, alphabetic order. So we'll start with romance. And so when it comes to romance and the romance genre, it's like a lot of these, there's a lot of movies that could fit in this as, you know, as one portion of that type of movie. You look at stuff like Annie Hall, which is a romantic comedy. You look at stuff like Sleepless in Seattle, which is, it has comedy, but it's more of a romantic drama. So I picked a film that I think a lot of people have seen, but I think is still underrated, and that of course is Lost in Translation. And Lost in Translation is a film that I saw when it came out in the theaters back in 2003. Of course, it won, you know, an Oscar for Sofia Coppola and stuff like that. And I think it's one of the best romantic drama comedies that ever be created, because the authenticity of not only being in Japan, not only the characters that are created by Scarlett Johansson and Bill Murray, but I really think it's about lost people, lost souls, individuals who don't necessarily come from the same parts of the universe, but somehow find connections in a world that is completely different than one another. And that's what I truly love about this film. I love, you know, I think Bill Murray got robbed for an Oscar from Sean Penn. I mean, it's not Sean Penn's fault, but I think he truly deserved the Oscar like Eddie Murphy did. And I think Scarlett Johansson should have gotten an Oscar nomination for, you know, best supporting actress or actress or whatever. But it's a movie about just people who find something in completely different worlds. And I loved it. It has every romantic thing you can think of, you know, the lost Lauren couple, the love of romantic city, the world that is being built upon, and it's just a great, fantastic film. And if you haven't seen it, which I know a lot of people have, I definitely recommend it. So for my romantic genre pick is Lost in Translation. So with that said, let's go ahead and move into comedy. And so when we get to comedy, this pick was not a way to show off every Bill Murray film. I actually didn't even think about that when I put this film on my list. But What About Bob is one of the most ridiculous, but one of the greatest comedies of all time, just for the simple fact that Bill Murray, who has always been almost in the prime of his career, is so out there, so insane, so ridiculous, and he's going up against this really kind of stick in the mud. This guy has a stick up his butt, who's played by Richard Dreyfuss. And to watch how this movie plays out, to watch how Bill Murray's character just completely envelops with his family, becomes one with his family, and to watch the insane nature of Richard Dreyfuss, who in essence was not really happy with Bill Murray on this film. He actually hated what Bill Murray was doing. It really shows. It really feels authentic. And then just watch Richard Dreyfuss just start going insane and start losing his cool, and just how he reacts to everything. He has a family that he truly loves, cares about, but he is a guy that is just completely losing his nut in a lot of ways. And just to watch Bill Murray and his zaniness and what he is known for, it's a perfect comedy. It's directed by Frank Oz, who's known for, you know, the Muppets and Yoda and stuff like that. These films that he directs are really strange and offbeat sometimes, and this movie's no different, but it's such a great comedy. It has such great comedic moments. Everything about it just works. So I love about What About Bob, and I think it's a great, perfect comedy. So with that said, we'll move into Sci-Fi, and we'll talk about it. So for my sci-fi or science fiction pick, I didn't want to go with Star Wars or The Matrix or any of these big Star Trek style movies where, you know, everybody's going to put it on their list. I wanted to go with a movie that maybe a lot of people haven't seen, but is almost like a precursor to The Matrix, and that is Alex Proyas's Dark City. Now, this is a film that Roger Ebert actually did commentary for on the DVD, which is kind of funny. Dark City is, to me, one of the most interesting, fascinating sci-fi films that has Rufus Sewell, it has Kiefer Sutherland, and it has a world that is being manipulated by an alien race. It has one of these conclusions or one of these twists in it that are one of the greatest twists of all time, in my opinion. But to watch this movie play out, to see Jennifer Connelly in this movie and how she interacts with the people, I'm going to do a review of this eventually, but this movie is everything that makes sci-fi great. I wish Alex Proyas had done much better films later on in his career. I do somewhat like iRobot, but Dark City, its look and its feel, it feels very much like a Metropolis from the 1900s, like the early 1900s type movie. It feels like it has this very cool, very dark aesthetic of just you never see the sunlight. There's never any, light of any nature. It feels like a very dreaded world. You feel uncomfortable. You feel sad. You have like William Hurt in this movie as a detective and how his story plays out. But the mystery, the intrigue, the individuals that are controlling this world is really, really fascinating. It's really cool. And it just really showed that Alex Proyas had some interesting concept and idea that he knew how to project effectively, and I thought it was a great film. So it's one of the coolest sci-fi films I've ever seen. I know a lot of people have seen the movie, but I think it's one of the most original films as well, and it goes right up there with The Crow for his other films. So, but with that said, let's go ahead and head into action, which is... Now, I will admit, there are a couple Michael Bay films that I like in his oeuvre films, like The Rock. I do like Armageddon. He has some films that aren't Transformers that are fun, they're entertaining, Bad Boys and stuff like that. So this is also could be put in sci-fi, but I wanted to put this film in my action category, and that's The Island. This film doesn't get a lot of love just for the simple fact that it's Michael Bay, and it doesn't have the greatest of stories, but the idea of clones and... the technology behind it and using clones to basically fix the problems of the world. It's the whole idea of concepts of if you had the ability to cure cancer or cure something wrong with your body, like your lungs or your heart, and all you had to do was pay for it, but you didn't know the science behind it, would you be willing to do it? And for the rich folks in this movie, they were absolutely willing to do it. And it's a very dark, very dystopian, very sad and depressing situation because they're basically taking the DNA and blood of these really rich people and allowing them to grow clones and harvesting their products. And we see it through many times in this movie through a system called the lottery, which is they're basically being faked out, saying they're going to go to this place called the Island. And they're basically, being forced to harvest their body parts to help the actual real people. And it's a film that I think truly shows Michael Bay's strengths and not only his action abilities, but his willingness to do different things sometimes. When you look at stuff like Pain and Gain, and I think it was like 13 Hours or something like that. It's a really interesting film. It has, once again, I didn't even think about this, it has Scarlett Johansson in it. It has Ewan McGregor, both amazing. Sean Bean is the bad guy, is the main evil guy, Jaimin Hansu, and it's a film that I think is underrated. I really do. I think it's a film that's fun and entertaining, and it's very thought-provoking for a Michael Bay film. So with that said, that is my action genre pick which is The Island. So we'll head into adventure, which is... So the adventure category is interesting because you almost could hit action with the adventure category. When I think adventure, I think like Swiss Family Robinson and these Pirate of the Caribbean style movies. You could also throw sci-fi, which I'm going to throw a little sci-fi in there with this adventure. But I picked Inner Space, which I have done a review for. Inner Space is one of those movies that the reason that it's an adventure is because you're traveling in the world of the human body. You're being chased by these evil corporate individuals. And it's just a fascinating, fun film. It's a Joe Dante film. It has Dennis Quaid, Meg Ryan, Martin Short. It has, all these weird bad guy characters. Robert Picardo is a fun Western cowboy character, stuff like that. It just has all the Joe Dante hallmarks of a world that is crazy and zany and over the top and silly, but it has this wonderful adventurous sense where you have this supermarket employee, Martin Short's character, who gets injected with the flying machine with Dennis Quaid in it, and they had to find some way of getting him out of the system. And then, like I said, the bad guys are chasing him. It's very much an adventure movie. It's very much a Swiss Family Robinson, or any of these films that had the bad guys chasing the good guys and stuff like that. And it's a fun film. It's, like I said, I don't know how underrated it is because I know a lot of people love it. But as far as adventure, I think it's a great adventure film. So that's my pick for adventure. And with that, we'll go into one of my least favorite genres, which is Western. So I can definitely honestly say I'm not the biggest Western fan. I really never have been. I think the only Western I truly enjoy is probably Outlaw Josie Wales. But there are other films that are considered Westerns that aren't set in Western settings. I did like News of the World, which is a Western in a lot of ways. But this film I picked, I actually completely didn't even think about for the simple fact that it is a Western. But it's also a really funny comedy. And that, of course, is City Slickers. Now, City Slickers is a almost perfect comedy in the simple fact that it's humorous, it's funny, it has great heartwarming moments, it has great thought-provoking moments, and it's about people at the almost like they're at the end of the rope. They just kind of lost sense of reality, and they go on this cattle drive. And you have Billy Crystal, who is a New York Yankees fan. I'm going to pull this out. New York Yankees fan wearing a Mets hat, which I always thought was really funny. You have, of course, Daniel Stern, who is doing, his over-the-top zaniness of Daniel Stern. And you have the late, great Bruno Kirby, who was in a lot of great comedies. And it's a great trio of characters because they're well written, they're well produced, they're well acted. You have, of course, Jack Palance, who won an Oscar in this movie, which is pretty crazy because he's amazing in the very limited time that he's in the movie. But it's an overall great Western that has sensibilities of being Old West and just having a great time while doing it. And I love it. I love everything about it. It's a fun, entertaining film. A lot of people have seen the movie, but I think it's a great genre film. It's a great Western, but it's also a great comedy, and it's also a great film about friendship and so on and so forth. And it has a great opening with the bull riding of the bulls, and I think Billy Crystal gets hit with one of the bull horns or whatever, which is really funny. So, but that's my take on the Western genre. I wish I had more to talk about on the genre, but like I said, it's not my favorite. So, but with that said, we'll go ahead and head into drama, which is. Now, when it comes to drama, this is a wide-ranging category of films. I honestly went with a film that I know billions of people have seen. A lot of people have seen these other films I talk about, but the film I want to talk about, of course, is Truman Show. Truman Show is one of my favorite films of all time. It kind of, as the years have gone along, since 97, I think, when it came out, or 96 or whatever, is a film that is so relevant today. It's kind of scary. It's about people in the limelight of a reality show, which is very prescient, as you can say, but unfortunately this guy has no idea that he's in it. And it's a movie that is so well constructed, so well ahead of its time. Has one of the great performances from a guy that is Jim Carrey, who never got an Oscar nomination. Has Laura Linney in it, who's great. Of course, has Ed Harris in it, who got an Oscar nomination. Jim Carrey still should got an Oscar nomination. It's written by Andrew Niccol, who has come in and wrote some interesting films himself, and it's directed by Peter Weir, which is really fascinating because Peter Weir is a very interesting individual. Has done some interesting films, but is not known for genre films like this film is. And I think it's a great drama. It has some humor, but it's about the ideas of people wanting to play God with individuals. And I love it up and down, left, right. It has some great moments in it. It has some great ideas, and it's scary to think that this could happen and people would enjoy it. So, but that's my take on the drama genre. Like I said, Truman Show, definitely check it out. So, but with that said, let's go ahead to the comic book genre. And so when it comes to the comic book genre, I really don't begrudge anyone or hate anyone who puts an MCU film or DCEU film in this category because they're very popular right now and they kind of have raised the stakes of what comic book movies can do. But I wanted to kind of go old school, and I've done a review for this film of a movie that a lot of people will not realize is a graphic novel or comic book movie. And that, of course, is Road to Perdition, directed by Sam Mendes. Um, I remember when this film came out, and I remember seeing the graphic novel on the shelf and reading it. And this movie basically it captures that graphic novel to a T, and it's one of Sam Mendes' best films. That isn't Skyfall, that isn't a Bond film. And it has so much vibrancy, it has so much life to it. The greens and golds, and Tom Hanks's role in the movie as the almost antagonist, protagonist of the story. Tyler Hoechlin, who of course would end up playing Superman later on in the CW show. Daniel Craig, who of course is an early film of Sam Mendes. They would go on to work in Bond. And then you have Paul Newman in one of his last films, and he gives an Oscar-worthy performance. It's just a film that has so much life, so much energy, so much rawness. It's very dark and disturbing, but Jude Law comes in as a guy who photographs dead bodies, but is also an assassin, which is really fascinating. But it's overall a film that I really think is a great comic book movie, a great, genre movie in its own right, and has a lot of fun with the material it's doing. But it also gives us a likable character in a hitman, which is of course played by Tom Hanks. So for my comic book genre, I actually picked Road to Perdition. So with that said, let's go ahead and head into horror. So the horror genre is filled with so many subgenres and so many different avenues that you could go down that it was hard for me to pick one movie to talk about. But the movie that I've always gone back to and watched every year that I haven't actually done a review on yet is, of course, Rare Exports. And Rare Exports is a Swedish film about what if Santa Claus was an evil demonic creature, a bad guy, and the effects of what if you open up the Pandora's box and allowed him to get out, and the violence nature of what he can do and all the creatures that he can throw out to people. It's very much a comedy in a lot of aspects, but it's also a very horrifying movie to watch because you always believe of Santa Claus as this mythical individual who gives presents and is a good guy. And the one thing I do like about when horror films or any of these characters are taken into a different 180-degree spin, kind of like in Futurama where Santa Claus is this like evil entity that's a robot. It's very much a fun kind of genre film that, people going up against an evil entity that is Santa Claus and realizing that Santa Claus is not a good person is kind of fascinating. It's like Krampus, you don't want to piss him off. You don't want to make him angry. It's a film that you should definitely check out if you haven't seen. It will make you question the reality of Santa Claus and will make you realize that sometimes these genre films that do different weird things are actually a lot more fun than the actual films like, the typical Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street. So, but with that said, Rare Exports, check it out if you haven't seen it. So that's my pick for genre of horror. So we'll go into the last category, which is animated, which is... So when it comes to animated stuff, I love Toy Story. I love, Pixar and Disney and, Fox and Secret of NIMH, as Trib pointed out and stuff like that. But I wanted to pick a film that is a direct-to-video animated movie, and it's a DC movie, which surprisingly enough, I love what DC does with their anime material. It not necessarily means everything works, but the stuff that hits well. And this one, the Flashpoint Paradox, which is one of my favorite comic book series of all time. The anime movie, even though it's only an hour and 20 minutes, and the Flashpoint Paradox is a very well thought out series, I think does really a lot of respectful stuff with the actual material. It starts out with, Barry Allen not knowing what's going on or where he's at and stuff like that. And it's the idea of like creating this new parallel world in which, everything's gone chaos. There's no Batman. His father is playing Batman. They're in the middle of this like civil war. Superman's like a tyrant and stuff like that. And, the one thing I hope with the new movie that's coming out is that the Flashpoint Paradox stuff will be well represented. But I think if you want to watch like one of the best DC movies when it comes to animated, I think the Flashpoint Paradox is one of the heavy hitters in that situation, and I really enjoy it. I think the cast is top notch. I think it's well written. I think it's well directed, and really truly shows you how good DC can be when they take the material and they actually do some justifiable stuff with it. So I know it's a kind of off the wall pick for a genre film, but I think as far as animated, I think this is one of the cream of the crop when it comes to animated. And I know it's not Pixar and Fox and all that stuff, but I think it's a great animated movie. And especially if you like DC, I think you'll enjoy it. So that's it. That's my top 10 films and 10 genres. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, I'm not going to throw us out to anybody in particular, but if you want to put together your own list, throw it onto your YouTube channel. You know, go ahead and do it. You know, whatever you pick is perfectly cool. But go ahead and see what your creative minds will come up with when it comes to genre picking. But anyways, thank you once again, the Trivial Theater, for putting out this list. It was really a lot of fun to do. But otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.